Welcome to another PL Together Lounge Talk. I'm Adam Geller, founder of Athena, the organization that builds video-powered professional learning tools for educators using video. Today, we're talking with Amy Tepper and Patrick Flynn of Tepper and Flynn. They're co-authors of multiple books, including their book, Learner Focused Feedback, 19 Strategies to Observe for Impact. Amy, Patrick, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
So, your books are about feedback, which a lot of folks often default to thinking someone external to the teacher is giving feedback to the teacher. And I want to dive in together about those moments when teachers are empowered to give feedback to themselves, because, that's really in my mind, the ideal of becoming a reflective practitioner. So, Amy, especially when we think about technology like video that helps teachers do this self-observation more easily, where should they start? What do they need to know? How do they start kind of focusing in on what they should be looking for when they start learning to observe themselves?
I'm smiling because I'm sure that you give everyone the advice of watch yourself and critique your outfit and your mannerisms first. Get through it. Get used to seeing yourself on camera. I think that the pandemic allowed many of us to get on camera a lot more frequently. And so it built this comfort that a lot really had never had. So I think that's a really positive for your organization that we cut down some of that, the adverse feeling about being on camera. But I think one of the greatest difficulties is, what am I even looking for? So when we're watching, we just don't even know what we're watching for. And that we work with leaders and coaches and teachers every day around that very idea. So you said that book is about feedback, when essentially half of our strategies between the two books are about evidence collection. And so we typically start with any team looking at what are the expectations for teaching and learning in your district. Those are already articulated somewhere in an instructional framework. Let's get those. Let's start to understand what those look and sound like. So when we're watching, we start to understand how ours looks in comparison to what we've said is effective or exemplary or not practice. The next would be to start to identify, am I attentive to just the teaching? It's easy to watch ourselves. Am I actually paying attention closely to what's happening for those learners so that I walk away understanding how I impacted their engagement levels and their ability to learn and master whatever my articulated target was? So just being able to shift, that's usually one of the greatest shifts we make in many of our veteran observers too, of, oh, I used to only watch the teaching. Now I have to watch the learning and start to marry what that's happening because.
I agree. That's some of the things on my greatest hits list of how to get started with video. I think I agree with the idea of get through the kind of simple things and move on to the meat of it. I really like that in that kind of framing, you reminded us we don't always need to record teachers teaching. We're recording evidence in classrooms, and the evidence of learning is about the students. So this is a kind of maybe the roadmap for teachers getting started. Patrick, I'm curious, as you think about bringing in self-reflection into buildings and building those systems, what role can self-reflection play for a coach or a school leader in their own work? Not about the work of the teachers, but in their work as supports for the teachers.
Sure. And as Amy had pointed out, most of the strategies that we focus in on is about that evidence collection in the classroom so that you become more and more attentive to learning first, and then look to understand kind of those causal relationships. And I think for most observers, and whether that be a coach, whether that be an administrator, or a lot of the peer-to-peer work that we do, that observer really just needs to be attentive to what are they collecting, but then how are they analyzing it after? Like when they get all of those notes, they get back to their desk, they look at things and they process. What's the depth of analysis that you're engaging in to understand better those causal relationships? So I think that the reflection on the part of those observers is really has to focus back in on, what am I seeing? how effectively am I seeing it, and what can I determine is really causing those barriers to be set up in classrooms, or causing the successful student learning that we're looking for, and be able to dig deeper into how that analysis is occurring.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from either of you. Here we're talking about video as a tool for teacher reflection, and obviously, uh, I'm not doing any work to convince you in this conversation. But how do you kind of tackle the kind of mindsets around, oh, I know what's happening, or oh no, I have a good read, or no, I have enough evidence. How do you help educators move past that moment of resistance into the kind of place where we've all kind of, the three of us probably have seen that an educator goes, wow, that was so great, but how do you help them overcome that resistance when they believe they have what they need?
I'm smiling because we face it every day. And
Mhm.
the administrators and coaches we train also face it every day, because when evaluation first rolled out and the big shifts occurred, we had a lot of inflation of ratings, and we weren't having honest conversations or even knowledgeable conversations about effectiveness. So we now have teachers who do sit and have been told that practices are effective, and they're essentially not as effective or not having the positive impact that we're looking for. And so you're breaking some history and some chains of repeated feedback that wasn't always accurate, or that built clarity around why or why it wasn't effective. So I think it takes time, as with anything, but at the heart, we're going to be a broken record a little bit on, it's about the evidence. And so when we can remove the subjectivity and remove it's my opinion about your lesson or about the effectiveness of your anchor charts or the appearance of your classroom structures, when it starts to really come back to, this is what I saw for these students. This is what these students said or did. And when you're live in a classroom said to me, when I'm watching on a video, placement of a camera or device is critical, because you can't get them to that accurate understanding if the mic is way far away and not on the actual tables where the learning is happening. Just like if I were in the room, I got to be where the learning is. So I think those are important points to think about when you're working to shift and build. And not everyone wants to hear that they're not as effective as they thought they were. It's one of the hardest things you have to own.
Patrick, earlier you kind of talked about how feedback is the thing that teachers want. How can self-reflection serve that want, that desire that they've been expressing to be getting feedback? I mean, can feedback for yourself be as satisfying?
I absolutely, right. Probably even more so in many ways, right? Once we have that ownership of our own learning, right, we create greater levels of meaning for ourselves than potentially what's happening when it's coming from additional sources or outside sources. So I think, we've very much been focusing in on developing that culture around feedback as the real first element of our work with any school or with any district. So having tools, resources, professional learning platforms like yours to be able to kind of integrate into the conversation to say there's multiple entry points for you as a teacher to dig in deeper to your own learning and to your own teaching, and see what's happening inside those classrooms, because ultimately it's about building that culture of learning in which everybody has a belief that everybody can learn, that we're going to accurately assess ourselves and each other in order to continuously improve, and build those systems and structures for that to occur. So I think starting with that idea that this is about a collective movement towards improved practice. Until that's really in place, it does become difficult for people to just say, oh yeah, I'm going to criticize myself, or I'm going to take critical feedback in an easy to learn kind of way. So.
I really value that kind of reminder here about the culture of feedback, the kind of shared professional vision around why the work is being done, because it removes the blame, for lack of a better word, off of any individual teacher, and establishes the need to look at yourself in doing the work as part of the shared beliefs of how the collective will move forward together for the benefit of the students. So I really like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that Amy started off this conversation with was really looking at understanding the expectations of the district. One of the ways we've been talking with districts about that lately is you have a portrait of a graduate or a vision of a learner that you're saying this is where you want to really be by the end of your pre-K through 12 experience with your students. Well, that's your connection. That's your meaning making. You took time to develop a core set of values and beliefs around what we want to accomplish for our kids. That's where you got to start. So let's back map those expectations from that end result, and really say that that's where you can build that connection making and that meaning making for yourself as an employee of this district, and as a teacher, and as a leader, as a coach, because we can all connect to that, because we say that's what we value.
So true. Well, we need to take a short break. If you're interested in what we talk about next, or what we've talked about before this, or you're watching this video on social media, head to pltogether.org for the rest of this conversation, as well as many more. Amy, Patrick, thanks so much for being part of PL Together.
Thank you.